Hi, it's Pete the Bumbling Modeler back again. Bit of a change of pace now. Instead of military vehicles, I'm going to build a 12th scale Tamiya bike kit, which is always a bit of a joy to build. So it's the Suzuki RGB 500. Don't worry about the Team Galena, that won't be a feature of this build. It's something I've wanted to build for a long time, and this kit's been out of production for I think since about 2010, so it commands quite a high price second hand. The one I always wanted to build was the Heron Racing red and black one that Barry Sheen used to ride. If that name means anything to you, that in that colour scheme it goes for an absolute arm and a leg. This one I managed to get second hand, albeit I had to have it shipped from Japan for 40 quid. So it was in my budget but I can't really stump up for the extra money for the decals for the Heron one. So there's a couple of things to bear in mind. First, I don't really like this colour scheme because it's quite an angular bike, and with all these curves it doesn't seem to suit it. So I don't really want to do the Team Galena one, and also with it being an older kit, I'll put the light on, but I'll get a bit of glare on the box. Sorry about that. I'll move the box in a minute. With it being an older kit, all the whites have yellowed. So if you hold a white next to those, you can see it's miles out. So once these areas were sitting there, the decals are sitting on the white, they'd be so stained and mismatched, they'd look horrible. And I can buy replacement decals this relatively cheap, as I don't like the scheme and I'm not going to. So what I thought I'd do is just do it in white. Back in the day, Suzuki used to race their own Suzuki bikes as Team Suzuki, but they used to sell them to customer bikes for the race teams. So Galena and Heron would have bought a bike off Suzuki, and theirs wouldn't be the works bikes, theirs would be their own. And when they bought them, they would have been in just white fiberglass. So I can do it as a customer bike rather than a works bike and not worry about any of the decals. All I'll do is paint on the yellow number boards, and I'll buy some generic Suzuki decals for the tank and the fairing, which will be relatively cheap. So it'll be a white bike, no sponsorship details on it, just as though it's been bought by a customer and delivered to them. And that way, with it being white as well, you'll appreciate the lines of the bike. Your eyes aren't being deceived by all these different sort of bits and pieces all over it. So that's the plan. It won't be heavily weathered. I don't like model motorbike kits weathered. I think they look a bit. I can't. Well, when it's done right, it looks good. I just can't get it. So I like a nice clean finish. It's become apparent on the other videos, the weathering ones get the most views, so it might disappoint the few of you who watch, but it will be detailed. So there'll be pin washes on things to highlight it. And I'll be playing about with nuts and bolts and bits and pieces to actually raise the detail. So hopefully that'll satisfy the weathering urge to see it being detailed in different ways. But if there's anything you need to, or you're interested in seeing in a bit more detail, just drop a note in the comments and I can focus on that when I build it. So that's the basic kit. I said detailed, so the sort of thing I'm talking about is all these 12 scale kits come with this bit of vinyl tube for the hoses, spark plug leads, brake pipes, all that sort of stuff. It's 1mm diameter. This is a 12 scale kit, so in real terms that equates to a 12mm piece of pipe or 1/2 inch. So that's ideal for things like spark plug leads, but not so good for brake cables, speedo cables, rev counter cables, that sort of thing. And just to highlight what I'm saying is, this is something I built a while ago. It's dusty, sorry, and it's falling apart. But this is using all the standard kit cables. So the throttle cables here, clutch cable. No. Although that spark plug has fallen out, so we'll glue that back in later. Although that spark plug looks okay with a 1mm lead coming off it, all these other bits and pieces, the throttle cables and things look well over scale. So the simplest way you can improve the look of a model motorbike is to replace that vinyl tube where appropriate with smaller cable. So this is 0.5 millimeters diameter, so if you scale that 1:12, it equates to like a 6 millimeter diameter, which is about right for things like throttle cables, clutch cables, and I'll highlight that. This is the one I'm just finishing at the moment before I start the Suzuki. So if you look there, the throttle cables are made out there, so you put a little bit of the vinyl tube on so it's got something to grip into, slip that in, move it around, clutch cable there's the speedo cables and rev counter cables poking out the bottom of the speedo, and it's a far, this isn't glued together yet, that's why it's falling apart. It's a far nicer scale, it gives it a far nicer look. So I would say if you are going to build a bike kit, invest in, I'll have to click on that, invest in a length of that. You get 2 meters of that. I've done the Kawasaki with it already. I've got enough for this Suzuki you're going to build, and probably another bike after that. And it was about, I've just looked on the Spot Models website, it was in euros, it's €3.5, I think. So for a euro a bike, you've sort of really improving the detailing up in the game. It does make a significant difference when people look at it. So I'd definitely do that if I was recommending anyone do anything in terms of model motorcycling. So that'll be part of the kit. This aluminium foil, it's a self-adhesive tape, and it's the stuff you use when you're sealing up insulation. So if you've got Solatex in building walls, you seal the gaps with that, or if you've got lagging round pipes, you seal the gaps with that. And I'll be honest, I got a length of this off someone who's lagging some pipes at work, and I've been using it forever. I've got about 3 meters. It's not more than the length, it's actually a roll, but we won't go into that. It's self-adhesive and thicker than the bare metal foil you use when you're detailing things, and it tends not to shrink back a bit. So if you can get hold of a length of that, I mean, this length here would last me a dozen motorbikes easy, possibly more than that. So it's, again, it's funny, I said it on the last video, things are dear, but long term, the more you get, the less you spend, as it were. So once you've invested in something and you're building a genre models, you've always got that. So I've got this, and where I'll use that, and it'll be used a lot on the Suzuki because it's a water-cooled bike, here's an example of it here, where these rubber boots come from the air boxes on this Kawasaki. On the full-size one, you get a hose clip or a Jubilee clip there. So to simulate that, you just cut a thin strip of that, wrap it round, glues itself on, and when you glance at that, you see a metal clip where you expect to see a metal clip, and it draws your eye in, and so it does help with the detail of it and helps you have a more realistic model. The other place I used it on this, which won't be applicable to this because there isn't any chrome on it, is this chrome bumper was attached to the sprue here. So when you snip it off, you get an ugly white bit of plastic where the chrome breaks away when you cut it, obviously. So I find that foil is a lot better than the bare metal foil because it's a little bit thicker, so you can use that to hide that scar, and it's thick enough that you can polish it up to get the same sort of chrome finish you've got on there, so it matches. So it's not exactly invisible mending, but it just draws the eye away from that bit of a disaster. So if you can get your hands on something like that, so much the better. It does help you improve things and add detail cheaply. Now the other thing I'm waiting for is a load of nuts and bolts and washers I've ordered, which you don't really need to, but with this kit being a little bit older, if you look at things like these footrests here, instead of a well-defined bolt head there, you've just got a roundish blob, which they're visible, and you can get away with that, but you're better off, if you can, replace them with something that's got a proper sort of shape to it. And the other place I'm going to use them is places like this cylinder head where you've got, I'll see if that'll focus, you've got quite a defined bolt head there, so there's no need to replace them in terms of what it looks like. But you're going to spray those aluminium, then try and touch them in a different sort of steel colour, And to do that without getting the paint spilling over onto the heads is quite hard. So I'm thinking it's probably going to be just as easy to shave off all those bolt heads, paint this, paint the new bolts a sort of silvery colour, then just glue them on, and then you don't get any danger of paint overrunning, and you get a crisper line around there. And it's the sort of bit that people are going to look at. So to get that right's significant. So, and there's other places like on the engine, we'll put some cap screws in it and things just to generally modernise it a little bit. The other place where it's going to make a big difference is things like the fairing for the bike. To get a good paint finish, it's a case of priming, rubbing down, base coat, several of those, rubbing down between them. So every time you're rubbing down, you either have to avoid all the little fittings you got on the fairing, so you end up with a bit that's always a little bit rougher, or you end up taking the top off and you lose the details. So I think we'll whip all the raised rivets on that off, drill a little hole where they are to mark the place, paint it, gloss coat it, put whatever decals we're going to put on it, and then paint some bolts the right colour and just old rivets and just slip them in there, so you end up with a really crisp, defined rivet on that. While this is in my hand, that's the other thing I've done, which I would recommend if you're buying a bike or a car, really. You get some parts that are split down the middle for ease of moulding, and the seat and the fairing this, there's a join line runs right down there, and the same on the fairing. So it's in two halves. The moment I got the kit, I glued these together using Revel contactor. I use that rather than my normal Tamiya XR because it's a slower setting one, and it's a bit thicker and it's got a gap filling potential. But because that's a solvent-based glue, it tends to evaporate away slowly, so you can get that looking perfect. And then a month later, with the shrinkage, you get a seam starting to reappear. So to get around that, the moment I get a kit that needs bits like this gluing together, I'll glue them together, just sling in the box and forget about it. And then while time's ticking by and you're waiting to start the kit, all that shrinking's happening. So when you do eventually sand that flat to get rid of any seam, there is no shrinkage, it's already happened. Then you just fill lightly on top of that with whatever your filler of choice is. So I must have glued these together 2-3 months ago, I suppose, and then just forgot about them. So they're there ready to use when I want to use them. For the filler on them, I used a concoction of Tamiya extra thin cement mixed with some styrene sheet, so it dissolves it. So it makes that's a bit water. You probably need to get more styrene sheet in that, but it makes a sort of gloopy mess, which is a very similar consistency to plastic itself and relatively flexible. So some fillers aren't that flexible, so when you spring that onto the bike to get it done, it might just crack that joint open again. So that's filled with that. It's been sanded and polished, so there's not a mark on it, and that'll be good to go. When I prime this, I'll probably find areas of mist. So bodywork is just a case of not taking shortcuts. It's polishing, sanding, filling, polishing, sanding, filling until you get a perfect finish on the primer. When you get perfect finish on the primer, the actual gloss coats are quite easy. So just take your time, which is why I like to get that together before I start. So that's where we are. We've got some of the bodywork ready to maybe look at primer. We've got some nuts and bolts that'll be arriving within the next couple of hours, according to Royal Mail. We've got our cabling we need, and we're sort of ready to start, really. So I will call this a day on this part of the video, and you'll see me again when we start to look at putting the engine together and drilling out little bits and pieces and just generally getting ready with it. So yeah, I mean, I'll say, if you want to see anything particular about this kit, just drop a comment and I can sort it out. Otherwise, I'll be building it as is. We'll alter things as we go. We can improve things cheaply and easily. We will do. And I would imagine we're talking probably 10 or 12 parts, judging by what I've done before. I'm not an expert in this, about 10 or 12 parts, which I'll try and keep to half hour each, just highlighting different bits. The paints I'll be using on the engine will mainly be alclad lacquers. they're a nice metallic finish, and the pigment's quite fine, so you don't get that. It doesn't look like a silver paint, it does look like a proper metal finish. So that'll be the scheme on that, and I'll try and show a bit of spraying while I'm doing that as the model goes ahead. So thanks for watching so far. This should, well, I think the first 2 parts will be up within a week, and then it'll probably be a bit more long-winded because I've only got 1 day a week where I can get in the shed to do this. But hopefully it'll be finished in a month or so. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.